Good morning, Europe. Welcome to the program. Our top stories for you this hour. Thai diver death. A Thai rescue diver dies during an operation to save 12 boys and their coach trapped in a cave for almost 2 weeks now. Novichok poisoning. New footage of the critically ill couple hours before getting poisoned. So how did they come into contact with a nerve agent? And over in the Cube, our social media news desk.
The international he said, she said continues between Britain and Russia, but we'll show you what Russians are saying themselves.
Collateral damage as China and the US head into a trade showdown. European businesses are more than a little worried. And a giant baby, Trump baby, will tell you how this could soon be flying over London. Thank you for joining us this morning. Good morning, Europe. We have breaking news for you this hour. A former Thai Navy SEAL has died while working to rescue the 12 boys and their football coach trapped underground for over 13 days now. Samarn Kunan ran out of oxygen in the early hours of the morning while attempting to return to the command center. He was 38 years old. Now, he'd been placing air tanks along a potential exit route in the network of the caves. A huge international operation has been underway for weeks with dozens of Thai Navy SEALs and international experts on site. Well, they face numerous challenges, notably helping the team negotiate those murky floodwaters in a weakened mental and physical state. Hundreds of thousands of liters of water are being pumped out of the cave each hour. But a forecast of heavy rains this weekend, this could further complicate rescue efforts. Now, who exactly was this Thai diver? Our team in the Cube, they've been digging into the background of this man. Alex, tell us more.
Morning, Tessa. Yeah, breaking news this morning. We're getting details through about who exactly this man was. Many people calling him a hero. Now, he died trying to bring oxygen tanks into the cave system. Let's just show a picture that's shared by a Thai news outlet. So basically, this Thai diver, the Thai news channel saying that during this press conference, they said the diver, they confirmed he was a SEAL unit officer and died during the rescue operation. Now, the diver himself pictured here. Now, we know that he fell unconscious trying to bring these oxygen tanks into the cave. His partner tried to revive him, but was unable to. Now, this morning, a lot of the posts that he himself has been sharing on Instagram were public. He was documenting his time spent there as part of this rescue operation, including this one from July the 4th, showing himself with the rest of the rescue team. So he was being very public about his support and throwing himself into this rescue operation. We now have been finding, a lot of tributes online from people who know him and sort of geotagging these posts. I think that's a crucial point to make here. Obviously, one thing to have the Instagram post, but we here in the Cube, Euronews' social media news desk, have been making sure that posts are coming from the right place. Obviously, a lot of pictures in a breaking news story like this are shared around without being from the right place. We can confidently say these pictures are geotagged to the location and the account we have verified as well with the name given by authorities showing the diver. But as we have here, the last picture he shared on Instagram, a public show of support showing him alongside that rescue team. Just one last one I want to show you very quickly. We have a Facebook just dropped in for us now. I think it's not quite appeared, but we will bring you more as we have it. Tessa.
All right, thank you for that tragic story, Alex and the Cube team. Now, our NBC correspondent Janice Mackey-Freyer, she is on the ground in Shanghai, and she's joining me now live. Janice, hi there. Tragic news this morning, clearly. What can you tell us from the ground there?
Well, it is tragic news that we were made aware of this morning, and it really is a reminder, Tessa, of the danger and the risks in this operation and the sort of decisions that are being made, the risks that are being calculated by the Thai officials who need to make the decision on how and when they're going to bring the boys and their coach out. They have been pumping water out of this cave system 24/7 for the past week. They've made some progress. Millions of gallons of water have come out. They believe that about a third of the journey that the boys would have to make, it's roughly 3 miles, and they think that a good third of it is now walkable. What they're trying to do is to decrease the water level in the parts of the cave that are the most risky. This, of course, are the tight, twisting passageways where the boys would have to scuba dive with assistance, but nonetheless a very scary proposition for these kids who don't know how to swim. Tessa?
Indeed, Janice, just looking at these images, it looks terrifying inside. And we'd like to know more about how the boys are doing. I know that they've been trying to get fiber optic cables into the cave so that they can talk to their families. Has this happened? Have they had contact with their families?
They've made a couple of attempts to get communication lines, at first a phone line, then an internet line, so that the boys and the families could be connected so that it would buoy their morale. They've been trying to train the boys to breathe in a full face mask so that they can make this very treacherous journey to the cave entrance. Their spirits seem to be good in the videos that we've seen coming out. The Thai medics have been in there for the past few days, caring for them, keeping them company, talking them through this, telling them that the whole world is watching them and that they're so strong and that they're so brave. The concern, of course, is that not all of them are in great shape. There's a few kids that are believed to be too weak to make this sort of escape. The coach is also apparently malnourished and not in the best of health. So this is the concern. The governor had been saying over the past couple of days that it was not likely that they were going to bring all of them out at the same time, that they were going to have to go one by one, and they were still deciding what the best order of evacuation is. Do they take the strongest out first, the youngest, the weakest? So these are all of the decisions that are being weighed here today. Of course, with this huge threat looming of the monsoon rains that are set to hit probably around Sunday. The conditions are never going to be better than what they are right now. The weather has been clear, the water has been pumping out, but as soon as the rains hit, they know that window of opportunity is going to close. Tesa?
Yes, indeed, Janice. And this news of the diver's death just highlights how dangerous this mission is. Thank you very much, Janice Mackie-Freyer, on the ground there in Chiang Rai. Now, despite today's tragedy, rescuers must continue to work to bring the boys safely out of the cave. And as Janice was saying, with heavy rains forecast, it's a race against the clock. NBC News' chief global correspondent Bill Neely has this story.
The world is watching them, but they want out. A dozen boys with brave faces, their rescuers with one huge problem: floodwater. Divers struggling to fight it, the boys still too weak to cross it. They can't swim, and it's 6 hours to the cave entrance. They're getting a crash course on diving, but the risks are deadly. The narrow passageway's a trap, even for the experts.
It's quite challenging, obviously. There's zero visibility, it's a confined space, so it's a challenge.
Rescuers are drilling and digging, and it's desperate, because it's a race against time, getting rid of water before the monsoon rains fill the caves again.
They are pumping millions of gallons of water out of the caves every day. Meanwhile, up on the hills, up to 30 teams are looking for holes or shafts they could use to winch the boys out.
With no rain for 3 days, commanders are now tempted to try a fast rescue. They said they needed 100% certainty there were no risks. If there's 90% safety, says the governor, we're ready to bring the boys out. 2 of them had birthdays this week. No celebrations here, just preparations for a rescue that can't come soon enough.
That was Bill Neely reporting there. Now to the UK. British counter-terrorism police have confirmed that the couple poisoned by the nerve agent Novichok fell ill after handling a contaminated item. Now, Dawn Sturgess and Charlie Rowley are still seriously ill in hospital, and police have not confirmed whether this Novichok was from the same batch of that was used in March on a former Russian agent and his daughter. Now, Russia have denied involvement and accused Theresa May's government of subjecting them to hell. Vincent McAviney is live now in Salisbury. Vincent, what is known about this contaminated item the police are referring to?
Good morning, Tessa. Well, as you say, police yesterday at that press conference confirming the prevailing theory, not that these two had been attacked like the Skripals, but that they had accidentally come into contact with Novichok from some sort of contaminated device that wasn't found in the clear-up operation here in Salisbury. Police now, as you can see behind me, are desperately searching sites across this city to try to find it.
New security camera footage showing Dawn Sturgess in a neighbourhood shop in the hours before she and Charlie Rowley ended up critically ill in hospital. Police now say they were exposed to Novichok after handling a contaminated item. It's the same nerve agent that poisoned former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia nearly 4 months ago. They were found unconscious on a park bench just 7 miles from Charlie Rowley's home, where the couple fell ill.
The possibility that these two investigations might be linked is clearly a line of inquiry.
6 sites visited by the couple have been cordoned off and are being securely guarded as a safety precaution. UK officials are now trying to reassure the public that health risks are low.
There is no significant risk to the wider public.
The British government accused Russia of the attempted assassination of the Skripals and now are demanding answers in this latest poisoning. The Kremlin continues to deny any involvement, but people here are fearing more of the deadly nerve agent may be out there.
Vincent, we can see the site, as you referred to, behind you, still cordoned off there. Can you tell us more about these sites that are being searched?
Yeah, there's 2 key ones here in Salisbury, Tesa. Now, you saw in the report there that when Dawn bought the wine on Friday evening, she and Charlie then went to a park called Queen Elizabeth Gardens. Now, that is one of the sites that has been sealed off. Now, both of these two are recovering drug addicts. And locals tell me, as picturesque as that park is, it is frequented by drug users, and there is drug needles and spoons and stashes there that have had to be cleared up in the past. So there's a possibility that these two stumbled across something like that whilst they were in the park and became contaminated there. Now, the other site here in Salisbury is the shelter down the street here, which Dawn is living in currently. Now, that shelter had a number of residents in it. They had to be evacuated yesterday afternoon, and the whole street has been shut off. There's a metal cordon being put in place there, and police forensic officers have erected tents. They're combing through the items both in the park and at this shelter to try to find the contaminated delivery device used against the Skripals. The only problem is they don't know what they're looking for, what exactly it is, what was used to spray the Novichok on the Skripals' door back in March.
That is quite a big problem if they don't know what they're looking for yet. Thank you very much for that update, Vincent McAviney in Salisbury there. And of course, that is one part of the story. The other part of it, Russia is accusing the British of deliberately, quote, muddying the waters and, quote, trying to intimidate its citizens. Well, Alex has been following the Russian reaction to this. Alex.
We have, Tessa, and needless to say, this has exploded on social media here in the UK, around Europe, and indeed in Russia as well. Now, our team here in the Cube, Euronews' social media news desk, checking all language social media to have a look at what people are saying about this. Now, we remember after the Skripal's poisoning that the UK-Russian embassy had some rather interesting tweets, some strongly worded tweets at the time. Well, they're back, and let's just bring up what they shared yesterday. Strong-worded tweet here saying that the UK is deliberately muddying the waters. They're calling for a joint Russia-UK investigation into this poisoning. They also accuse the UK of confusing and intimidating its citizens over the handling of this case. They also then took aim at the Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, the UK Home Secretary, who called on Russia to explain this latest poisoning. Well, the Russian embassy also attacked him on the claim there was a Russian disinformation campaign. Well, they say, hey, the best way to get rid of a disinformation campaign is to lift the secrecy of the investigation. There's an attack on the way the British have dealt with the first and now the second Novichok poisonings, and to work together to discover the truth. Now, you remember after the last poisoning, the Russian authorities were criticised quite heavily for trolling the British. This was one of the tweets there. They said there's no evidence, so better call him Poirot, the fictional detective from Agatha Christie's series. So the Russian embassy, again, returning to this tone of mocking and accusing the British of failing to adequately communicate with them. However, on Russian social media, VK, we've got a post here that's been translated by our Euronews team. If I can just bring up the accurate translation just for me here, basically saying, wow, British newspapers have suddenly learned about the existence of the word proof. It's quoting an article here in the English language newspaper, The Guardian, saying now they demand evidence from London about poisoning by Russia and the Skripal. So we're seeing a lot of this in Russian media. They are not only sharing Russian language media, but also English language media, now calling on London to offer some more clarification. I just want to finally end on what the English language Russian news organisations are saying. RT sharing an article saying, who's going to gain from this Novichok poisoning. And in it, they say analysts say to them, the UK is the one who is trying to destabilise a hugely successful World Cup. So a variety of Russian voices, all of which want more answers from the UK. Tesa.
All right, thank you for bringing us the other side of the story as well, Alex and the Cube team. Thanks. And still to come for you on Good Morning Europe, after the death of a Thai diver in Chiang Rai, we'll hear from a professional diver about the dangers faced in a rescue like this one. And a scandal hit, Scott Pruitt resigns as head of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. We'll hear more about the allegations that led to him stepping down. That's after a short break. You're watching Good Morning Europe. A reminder of our top story. A former Thai Navy SEAL has died. He was part of the team helping to rescue the 12 boys and their coach trapped in a cave for over 13 days. Well, he died this morning after entering the cave to lay oxygen tanks along a potential exit route. Angela Merkel's ruling coalition has reached an agreement on immigration policy that's bringing to an end a row which had threatened to bring down her government. The German chancellor looked in a relaxed mood yesterday evening on a visit to Baden-Württemberg, while back in Berlin, her team closed the deal. Andrea Nahles, leader of the center-left Social Democrats, came on board after plans to set up dedicated transit centers in Bavaria were dropped. But asylum seekers registered in other countries, they still face being sent back in a fast-track 48-hour process. And Interior Minister Horst Seehofer, who had called for tougher regulations, said he was, quote, extremely satisfied with the deal. Now, remember how Austria's Chancellor Sebastian Kurz called for a, quote, axis of the willing. Now, that's with Italy and Germany because he wanted to crack down on migration. Well, those three countries, they say they'll be holding talks next week on how to stop the flows of migrants crossing the Mediterranean to reach Europe. Sebastian Kurz discussed the plan on Thursday with Germany's hardline Interior Minister Horst Seehofer. The Austrian Chancellor now holds the rotating presidency of the EU, and he will be meeting later this morning in Vienna with European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. And following it all for us in Vienna is our correspondent Stefan Grobe. Stefan, good to see you there. Tell us, what can we expect from this meeting?
Yeah, good morning, Tessa, from Vienna. So the Austrian Chancellor and his cabinet, his entire cabinet, will host the EU Commission in one of the big buildings behind me. This is UN City here in Vienna. And the main objective of this routine get-together at the beginning of any EU presidency is, of course, to fine-tune policy, to bring the EU Commission on board and to coordinate policy. Now, there's a lot on the agenda, but the overwhelming issue is, as you said, the migration crisis. And here Sebastian Kurz will fill in Jean-Claude Juncker on his latest talks he had yesterday with the German government. And of course, the objective being to make Jean-Claude Juncker happy, which is not a small feat, because there were fears within the EU Commission that Sebastian Kurz's hardline stance would eventually lead to internal border controls, thus an undermining of the Schengen system.
Yeah, Stefan, we know about his hardline position in that other countries have been thinking, OK, Austria is going to hold a rotating EU presidency. Do we know any more detail about the exact policy he's going to try to push forward?
Well, that's exactly the problem. We don't know the details. Sebastian Kurz, yesterday in a meeting in a briefing with foreign correspondents, remained vague. His overall objective is, of course, to stop illegal immigration and to close the Mediterranean route. So no more migrants across the Mediterranean Sea. The question, of course, is how do you do that? You can just not build a fence in the Mediterranean. So then Kurz says, well, we have to cooperate with Africa. We have to establish disembarkment platforms in Africa. But here the problem is, of course, that no African country has come forward yet and said, well, we're willing to do this. So how do you implement a policy that relies deeply on cooperation with somebody who's unwilling to do this? Here, Sebastian Kurz needs to step up and tell us what the details are.
Indeed, can't make plans without the agreement of the other side. Thank you, Stefan Grobe in Vienna there. And a lot more to come for you on Good Morning Europe. It's crunch time for Theresa May as she hopes today's cabinet meeting will overcome deep rifts that have hampered Britain's Brexit plans. We'll speak to our correspondent in London. And as the trade war between China and America escalates, we'll hear what impact it might have on the world economy. More on that after the break. Welcome back to Good Morning Europe. Now our next story, quote, "We have a great opportunity and a duty." Those are the words of the UK Prime Minister Theresa May ahead of a crucial meeting of her senior government ministers later today to discuss Britain's future outside the European Union. Now she's assembling her cabinet at her Chequers country residence at what's being billed as a showdown meeting. Well, I'm joined now by Euronews correspondent Bryony Williams, who's in Westminster for us. Bryony, what can we expect from today's meeting?
Well, what we can expect is more detail about the UK's future relationship with the EU come Brexit. Top of the list is the customs union. At the moment, the UK enjoys tariff-free, frictionless trade with all the EU member states. Now, we did hear that some ministers and businesses want this to continue. In recent days, we've heard from the likes of Jaguar Land Rover, big firms saying that this needs to continue, otherwise jobs and investment could leave the UK. Yesterday, we heard for some plans to be introduced that there could be new technology on the borders, meaning that any trade tariffs could continue to be paid electronically, meaning that in years to come, Theresa May may be able to negotiate trade deals with the likes of the US or New Zealand or Australia. But this is all in theory. There are ministers saying that actually this is too closely tied to the EU, and this is where the bone of contention lies. Going into Chequers today at 9:30 is a divided cabinet. You want some ministers who want a hard Brexit. You want other ministers that want a soft Brexit. And this is where the showdown comes. Theresa May wants all of her cabinet to be singing from the same hymn sheet. But going into this meeting, ministers have been told to leave their phones outside so that nothing is leaked. And there's rife speculation that we could even see some top ministers like the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson resigning because they don't like what Theresa May is putting forward. And if there are more than one minister that does resign, that could lead to a vote of no confidence and indeed a collapse of government. So really, you say showdown and crunch talks. They're going in at 9:30. Who knows when they will come out and indeed what will happen?
All right, thank you for that update, Bryony Williams there in Westminster. Thanks. Now, it's a dangerous escalation in the trade dispute pitting the world's two biggest economies. U.S. tariffs on $34 billion of Chinese imports have just come into effect, and Beijing has warned it would hit back. Well, Sasha Vakulina, our business editor, joins me now in the studio to walk us through this tit for tat. Sasha, well, it's going to be harder and harder to follow. Give us the latest.
Absolutely. Harder and harder to follow, and even more complicated for those countries and everybody watching what's happening between the US and China. Because, of course, Tessa, here we're talking about the world's two largest economies. Whatever is happening between them, and if it's something conflicting, something as a threat, at first we've heard the threats, now we're into the real action between these two, that would have impact everywhere in the world. We do know, indeed, as you said, 6 o'clock in the morning, Central European time today, the US tariffs have come into force. What we don't know yet, we're waiting yet for the confirmation and for the details from China. We do know that China said they're forced now to retaliate, and they're going to report in the US to the World Trade Organization. We need details. We need to see what's on China's list against the US, considering their goods. We do know that on the American list, on the tariffs, the US will hit Chinese goods. There are like lots of things and lots of goods that are going as parts of big productions. For example, semiconductor chips, they're used in TVs, in computers, in smartphones. These products might be more expensive for American consumers now.
Yeah, speaking about consumers, can you just tell us what the impact will be again for everyday people, us, ordinary people?
Well, for us ordinary people, especially here in Europe, I would give you an example of the European car makers who have in a very tricky situation. Now, on one hand, they do have some manufacturing lines in the US, and they're now in the middle of this US-China confrontation. And on the other hand, they're also fearing the US car tariffs on European car makers. So
basically, we're in the middle just waiting to see how it affects. Thank you very much, Sasha Vakulina, our business editor. Now, a doomsday cult leader behind a fatal gas attack on the Tokyo subway has been executed. That's according to Japanese public television. Shoko Ashara led the Supreme Truth cult, which mixed Buddhist and Hindu meditation with apocalyptic teachings. In 1995, it carried out a sarin gas attack during the Tokyo rush hour, which killed 13 people and left more than 6,000 injured. 24 people were killed and at least 49 injured when a series of explosions ripped through fireworks workshops in a town just north of Mexico City. Well, the dead included at least 4 firefighters and 2 police officers who rushed to the scene after the first explosion. The UNHCR Refugee Agency is urging Jordan to open its borders to 320,000 Syrians fighting in their homeland. Well, fighting is now close to the Jordanian border as the Syrian army seeks to win back rebel-held territory. Russia says it's seeking to broker peace talks. And just up ahead, we'll bring you all of your top stories, including more on that breaking news story of the Thai diver who died while trying to rescue the 12 boys and their coach still trapped in that Thai cave for almost 2 weeks now. Plus, we will talk to a chemical weapons expert to give us more insight on that second Novichok poisoning in Britain. And look at this. This is a giant Donald Trump balloon. We'll tell you why it could soon be flying over London. But before that, let's have a look at today's no comment from Spain, where animal rights protesters have taken to the streets in Pamplona ahead of the San Fermin Bull Running Festival. Your top stories on Good Morning Europe. Thai diver death. A Thai rescue diver dies during an operation to save 12 boys and their coach trapped in a cave for almost 2 weeks now. Novichok poisoning, new footage of the critically ill couple hours before getting poisoned. So how exactly did they come into contact with a nerve agent? And collateral damage as China and the US head into a trade showdown. European businesses, they're more than a little worried. Back to our breaking news story today. A diver has died while working on safely rescuing 12 boys and their football coach who have been trapped in a Thai cave for over 13 days now. Former Thai Navy SEAL Samarn Kunan ran out of oxygen in the early hours of the morning while attempting to return to the command center. He was 38 and he'd been placing air tanks along a potential exit route in the network of caves. A huge international operation has been underway for weeks with dozens of Thai Navy SEALs and international experts on site. Well, they face numerous challenges, notably helping the team negotiate murky floodwaters in a weakened mental and physical state. Hundreds of thousands of liters of water are being pumped out of the caves each hour. But a forecast of heavy rains this weekend could further complicate rescue efforts. And joining me now live from Thailand is a diving instructor, Christelle Goldstein. Christelle, you're well aware of the obstacles involved in diving. What are some of the common issues that divers and young people, as young as the boys in the cave, might face during a rescue?
Well, this diving in a cave is not like regular diving in the ocean. It's very difficult and very dangerous. People are in small spaces and dark water, and they don't have any surface to ascend to. So usually there should only be trained people doing that. Of course, these boys are not. So,
what are the chances of being able to teach young boys like that very quickly?
Teaching them how to dive quickly would not be possible, but teaching them the basics and listening to the guys bringing them out should be possible, as long as they can remain calm and don't panic.
Yeah, I think that is the main thing. And, you know, one of the main differences, like people, when they think of diving, they think of open ocean diving, but you're saying that cave diving is very different. Can you tell us the difference?
Yes, the main difference is that they are diving in a confined space. So they have really poor communication with the other divers because they can't see each other. They're diving in zero visibility. I mean, it's like diving without seeing anything, just feeling where you're going. They have to follow the sides, or in this case, there's ropes already, which the professional divers put there. Also, their air supply, they're limited in air supply. So when they're going through a tunnel, they must have enough air to go the space for the time they need to go through.
And Christelle,
it's all quite delicate compared to...
Yeah, and you have worked with a lot of beginners, I suppose. Mentally, what kind of state should they be in? I mean, can you walk us through how beginners what state they would be in?
Yes, well, as I say, the main thing would be to remain calm. Even people learning how to dive in open sea will often panic or get scared because you're breathing through a machine which is in your mouth. It feels like you're breathing. It's limited, even though it's not. And the boys would have to go through a very small space, dark space. They would really have to control themselves. Then again, they've proven in the cave they're quite smart and quite brave, so they might be able to do this. Probably best would be to try and sedate them a little bit so they can just follow their guides and get through.
Yeah.
The thing is, if people panic, they put other divers in danger as well, because they'll try to grab people and they'll try anything to get out of that cave. So it's quite dangerous for the boy and for the rescuers.
Indeed. Thank you very much for that insight, Christelle Goldin, who is in Thailand, and she is a diver herself. Thank you very much. Now, after a series of scandals over his conduct in office, the embattled chief of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has quit after only a few months on the job. Scott Pruitt has blamed, quote, unrelenting attacks, but he's the subject of at least a dozen investigations over spending and alleged abuse of office. He was one of the most divisive members of Donald Trump's cabinet, slashing regulations and cutting the agency's activities. Well, he's also played a major role in pulling the United States out of the Paris Climate Accord. Pruitt is the fourth senior member of the president's team to leave. Our correspondent, Alistair Sanford, is in the studio with me to talk us through this story. Alistair, of course, a lot of controversy surrounding this. Let's talk about him leaving his post.
Yes, well, of course, beforehand, when he took office, the outrage was over his views on climate change and the planet. When he's left office, it's all about his behaviour. There's a whole list of scandals here, and if I list them all, I think we'd have to extend the programme. But any one of these would have been fatal to any of his predecessors. Conflict of interest and accepting favours. He rented a plush Washington apartment at a knockdown rate. Who from? From the wife of a major oil lobbyist, and yet he's supposed to regulate that industry. Lavish spending, $36,000 on one flight alone. Renovations, $43,000 for a soundproof booth so that he could have private conversations in his office. Security, 24-hour protection from a 20-strong team, full-time, way beyond those of his predecessors. Add to that a series of bizarre errands and favoritism, two close aides who apparently got huge pay rises. In the end, these forced him out. In his resignation letter, he blamed unrelenting attacks on himself and his family, but Donald Trump's reaction has been interesting. Let's have a look at this tweet. It's the wording is tame, really, by his standards, saying that Scott Pruitt did an outstanding job and I've accepted his resignation. This is standard managerial jargon. There's no Trump fire or fury here at the vile media that forced Pruitt out. So it seems that he was pretty angered by the bad publicity. And remember, of course, that Trump was elected to drain the swamp in Washington.
And yeah, quickly, Alistair, I mean, what does this mean? This is an important post. So what would it mean for the U.S.'s environmental policy moving forward?
Well, you can have a look at who his replacement is for the time being. Now, remember, Pruitt was a close ally of the fossil fuel industry. His acting replacement, Andrew Wheeler, is a former coal industry lobbyist. That's prompted one senior Democrat to tweet that environmental protection is no longer in the hands of big oil, but king coal. I think there's little here to suggest there's going to be a change in policy. However, Pruitt was a powerful advocate of that conservative climate change skeptic agenda. The question is, will his replacement be as effective? As for the White House, well, it's the fourth member of Trump's senior team to leave, but Trump has survived plenty of other incidents like this.
He has indeed, and I wonder if this is the end of it. Thank you very much, Alistair Sanford, for that. And still to come for you on Good Morning Europe, our sports correspondent will be here to give us the lowdown on the World Cup quarterfinals. Our top story on Good Morning Europe, a former Thai Navy SEAL has died. He was part of the team helping to rescue the 12 boys and their coach trapped in a cave for over 13 days. He died this morning after entering the cave to lay oxygen tanks along a potential exit route. Well, who exactly is this Thai diver? Our team in the Cube have done a little digging. Alex has a story.
Morning, Tessa. Yes, we have. And tributes are pouring in. Tributes pouring in for Saman Gunan, the former Thai Navy SEAL diver. This is Instagram in just the last hour or so. You can see here, RIP our hero in several of these posts. Saman Gunan is being identified as a hero. Now, he died going into that cave, taking oxygen tanks in. He was unable to get back out before his own oxygen ran out, and his diving partner was unable to save him. So Instagram is lighting up this morning, all of these posts paying tribute to this brave man. Also, we've got friends of his. We found public posts from friends of his, which we can bring you. If you just walk over with me over here, we can bring you this screen over here, which shows a post from a friend of his, of another Thai Navy SEAL diver. It's also worth saying that Samangunan was very public about his role in these Thai rescues. This is the very last picture he shared on Instagram before the accident which killed him. Here he is with the rest of the Thai rescue team. You can clearly see he's an integral part of this. He was very public in his support, being there, going through these caves. We've heard earlier in the programme how dangerous it is to dive through caves like this. This is not open water or ocean diving. We have verified all of these images. We've done that by checking the name of the individual with the name given by the authorities and then geolocating these posts to come from the Tang Luang region, which is where the cave is located. Our team here in the Cube this morning, making sure all of these things tally up. So, as we've seen, tributes pouring in on Instagram, and a man who was very dedicated to the work he was doing and particularly to this rescue. Tessa.
All right, thank you very much for that, Alex, in the Cube. Now, questions remain in England over why the pair who came into contact with the nerve agent Novichok were exposed to the poison. Sites across the city are closed off, where it is thought that Don Sturgess and Charlie Rowley could have been exposed to the substance. It is the same military-grade agent used against former spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter Julia 4 months ago. While the Skripals have since been discharged from hospital, Don Sturgess and Charlie Rowley remain in a critical condition. But what exactly is Novichok and how does it affect humans? Well, joining us now is Philip Ingram. He is a chemical weapons expert live in Birmingham. Thank you for joining us today. Now, it's been a few months since the Skripal poisoning. Is this the nature of this particular nerve agent, like to stay on for that long and not lose its potency?
It is. Novichok is an agent that's designed to be very persistent, which means it can stay around for a long period of time. Militarily, it's the chemical equivalent of a minefield, and therefore it doesn't degrade quickly under normal conditions.
All right, and what are the effects of this on the body? Because the couple, they're still in critical condition. Can you just walk us through that?
Well, it is absorbed through the skin, and therefore it can build up to a toxic level over a period of time after someone's come in contact with it. And it's what's called an organophosphate nerve agent. So it attacks the ability of the nerves to switch their messaging off by stopping the production of an enzyme called acetylcholinesterase. And what that then does is means that the body's nerves keep firing. And you start to get the initial symptoms are runny nose, runny eyes, and then it'll develop into headaches, and the vital messaging that keeps your body moving properly starts to shut down as fluid builds up in your lungs, and eventually you'll suffer, you'll drown, and you'll suffer heart failure.
No, that sounds incredibly terrible. Now, you're educated guest. You're an expert in this. Is it from the same batch? How do we find out if it is from the same batch that was present 4 months ago, or if it's a new batch? How do we find that out?
Batch is a very difficult word when you're dealing with drugs and chemicals, because it means that you have to be able to prove it's come from exactly the same vat at exactly the same time. And the UK Home Secretary yesterday said that they may not be able to determine that chemically. However, the statistical chance of there being a second Novichok agent in a small, sleepy, beautiful city in rural England within 4 months of a previous attack, when it was the only attack in the world, is highly, highly unlikely. So this is almost certainly contamination from some of the detritus that's been left by the would-be assassins of Sergei and Yulia Skripal.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Philip Ingram, a chemical weapons expert there, talking to us from Birmingham. Thanks. Now let's go to sports. For football fans, it's shaping up to be an exciting few days as the World Cup quarterfinals kicks off later this afternoon. Well, here to tell us more about what to expect is our sports correspondent, Andy Rubini. Andy, good to have you with us as always. So can you tell us what we're looking ahead to?
Well, you do have some very interesting matchups. France against Uruguay. Do you remember when France played against Argentina, attacking football?
You're testing me again.
No, I'm not. Not yet. Loads of attacking football, goals. Unfortunately, I'm not expecting any of that against Uruguay. It's just not the same game. France do like to go for the counter-attack, but in order to counter-attack a team, you need to exploit the gaps, especially between the defence and the midfield, and there just aren't any at the moment in this Uruguay side. They have Jimenez and Godin playing as centre-backs, and they tend to stay very close to their defensive midfielder, who is Torreira, and has had a very good tournament, in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see how the likes of Mbappe and Griezmann try to exploit any weaknesses, if there are any, in this Uruguay side. The winner of this team will play against either Belgium or Brazil, which is great. It's the tournament favourites against the leading goal scorer. Belgium have scored 12 goals so far and will be up against a team, however, who have only conceded 1 goal, and that's Brazil, so that should be very interesting.
And what about Saturday's game? Is that going to be any more exciting?
It will be, I hope. England against Sweden, two well-matched teams. I was speaking to people earlier, and they were telling me that England were favourites and it should be rather easy. I think we need to start giving more respect to this Sweden side, who have been absolutely great since 2016, beating heavyweights and just showing that they can definitely go probably all the way. And either side will play against either Croatia or hosts Russia for a place in the final.
All right, it's going to be a good weekend. Thank you very much, Andy Rubini. Thanks. And still to come for you in Good Morning Europe, why a Trump balloon has received a lot of attention. Well, we will find out more after the break. Welcome back to Good Morning Europe. Now our next story, a controversial Trump baby blimp. It's a massive balloon, has been given permission to fly over London. Alex will tell us more about this. Alex.
I find it quite amusing how you try to explain it there, because it sounds a bit surreal, doesn't it, Tessa?
It does.
You're trying to sum this story up. Now, as political protests go, this is probably one of the strangest we've seen. Let's just bring you this picture. This is an animation of what this 6-metre-high, helium-filled Donald Trump blimp or balloon is going to look like in the eyes of the activists who raised almost around £18,000 to fly this over London during the president's visit. It shows the president in a nappy, throwing a tantrum with a phone on Twitter. So you can see they're going in for the president's character here and effectively saying he's unfit to hold his office, he acts like a baby and he throws tantrums on Twitter. Now they're saying here they've invented a Twitter account mocking the persona of Donald Trump, saying that while the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, tried to play hardball, in the end he gave permission and this balloon will fly over London when the president is in town. Now, for Nigel Farage, friend of Donald Trump and supporter of Donald Trump, he said this is the greatest insult to a sitting US president ever. So perhaps here the suggestion is, even if you don't like the man, you are attacking the office of the elected president of the United States, one of the UK's closest allies. Let's not forget that special relationship we often hear an awful lot about. Other people, though, mocking response from Farage. Owen Jones, a columnist in the UK on the left side of the discussion, saying, well, the hard right call the left snowflakes when they complain about people offending them. Well, here, they clearly can't deal with the inflatable Donald Trump balloon. Now, on the same day this news came that the blimp would fly across London, the Lord Mayor of Sheffield, pictured here, bit of an unconventional figure, announced that Donald Trump was, quote, a waste man, that's like a nobody in slang in the UK, and that he was banned from the great city of Sheffield. He also wore a sombrero in the photograph and announced that he was going to make July the 13th, when Donald Trump was coming to visit, Mexico Solidarity Day. Now this, while it was seen to mock Donald Trump, actually was criticised as well. I mean, just one post I want to bring you here from Ed Hancock saying, actually, the sombrero, that's an incredibly stereotypical symbol that actually the Lord Mayor of London himself here might be offending people. So there's a lot of offence going around. What do you think? What do you think of this blimp? What do you think of Donald Trump being banned from going to Sheffield? And are you going to be in London for his visit? You can let us know your thoughts using #TheCube.
People will be looking up at that time.
Yeah,
thank you very much, Alex and the Cube team. And thank you for joining us in Good Morning Europe. Do stay with Euronews for all of your top stories. And we'll leave you with today's No Comment from Thailand, with the latest from the rescue efforts to free the 12 boys and their football coach still trapped in the cave for over 12 days now. That's almost 2 weeks. And here we're looking at live pictures from the site. Rescue workers, you can see there's rain. They're trying to beat the rainy season. And today, a Thai diver has died on that rescue operation.